He does the video communication.
Okay. Welcome, everybody. I'd like to call to order the meeting of the Tompkins County Development Corporation for Wednesday, March 12th, 2025. I want to do the Development Corporation first because in connection with our IDA meeting, we're going to have an executive session, and I'd like to make sure we are open to the public for the Development Corporation and don't have to break that up. So, first item of business, privilege of the floor, and I would take privilege of the floor for both the IDA and the Development Corporation. I have one blue card. If there's anybody else who wishes to address the board, I don't see anybody online, but I assume there isn't. We have Teresa Alt. Welcome.
Okay, this is on, I think. I'm Teresa Alt, 206 Eddy Street, City of Ithaca. Heather McDaniel's memo to the board about a housing demand analysis says, quote, the county commissioned a housing needs assessment primarily focused on the affordable housing segment of the market in 2016, end quote. That may be what the county wanted, but it is not what the county got. I attended the consultant's report. He said he was not drawing attention to low-cost housing because developers would not want to build it. This points to a hazard with hiring consultants. They are business people. They make most of their money working for rich developers and landlords. They produce the results that most of their clients want to hear. Sometimes they build assumptions into their formulas that are self-serving assumptions of business people and economists. Then they feed in numbers and then claim that they have proved what they assumed in the first place, now with numbers addressing the specific place or situation added in. A housing needs assessment is a great idea, but you have to be careful not to hire a consultant who assumes that we have no interest in people without money. Thank you.
Thank you, Teresa. Is there anybody else who wishes to address the Development Corporation or the IDA? Seeing none, I'd ask if there's any additions to the agenda. I don't believe there are any. We can proceed directly to business then, and I think we have a guest with us today to talk about the Development Corporation annual audit. And I'd invite Evan to come up. Yeah, at the end.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Thank you all for having me here this afternoon. I'm Evan Cleveland, audit partner with Inserl & Company CPAs. I'm here to present the results of the audit of both the Tompkins County IDA and Development Corporation combined. And I'm going to cover the executive summary, which is the top document that if you got a paper copy, it'll be right on the top. So we are issuing an unmodified opinion on the financial statements for both entities. That's otherwise known as a clean opinion. It's the best opinion that you can get. It means your assets, liabilities, net position, revenues, and expenses are all fairly stated in all material respects. We also perform an audit under government auditing standards, and that report is also unmodified clean opinion, no instances of non-compliance, no material weaknesses, no significant deficiencies. Finally, we also issue a report on investments in accordance with the Public Accountability Authorities Act, and that has no issues noted associated with it. We also issue a very short management comment letter, which just defines deficiencies in internal controls and has nothing to report. And as part of our audit, we're required to communicate with those charged with governance at the planning stages and at the conclusion of the audit. We do so through a communication letter, and we had no comments of concern to communicate to anyone associated with the audit. We did cover the audit in quite detail, the audit report with the audit committee last Monday. And now I'm just here to give the high level overview. At the end of 2024, the IDA had total assets and Development Corp combined of 2.2 million, and that's also the net position as well. And that's down slightly from the previous year, just based on investments in economic development within the county. Overall, the audit went very well with the clean opinion, the no audit findings. We really appreciate the efforts of the management team, Ina, Heather, Kelly, and then also Laura with us via Zoom. And I'll open it up to any questions about the audit process, or anything in the audit report.
I would just like to repeat a couple things that we discussed at the Finance Committee. One of them being that it's very nice for your audit meeting to be very boring, and it was. Which is, a tribute basically to our staff. And I wanted to say thank you to the staff for the hard work you do to make sure our numbers are where they're supposed to be. So, good work.
Awesome, thank you.
All right, any other questions, comments on the audit materials? Jeff, you were there. Did you have anything you wanted to add? Did you think it was not boring at all?
It's very exciting, Rich. I appreciate that. So what I will say is I appreciate Evan and his team coming in. Felt like it went very well. Just so the other board members know, the Audit and Finance Committee did meet last Monday with them, and we approved the audit report subject to certain changes. So we are now looking for an approval at the board level so Ina can finish preparing her report that needs to be done by March 31st, right?
31st, yes.
Would I take your comments as a mover for the approval?
I will move them, yes.
And Greg seconds. Okay. Any further discussion? And I would move that we accept the audit report for both the IDA and the Development Corporation here, if that's acceptable to everybody. So, Duxon?
Yes.
Deborah?
Yes.
Jerry?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Greg?
Yes.
Todd? Yes. And the chair votes yes. So that's unanimous. And again, thank you to Insero for your work.
Thank you.
Thanks, Evan.
Thanks, Evan.
Okay. And now we have some action we need to take to help Ina with her end of month for Paris. Kelly, do you want to introduce that?
We do, yes. So Ina has been working diligently to collect all of the annual data that's required to be uploaded into the Paris system, and I'll echo your comments. We are very appreciative and thankful for the work that Ina does all year, and especially during this very stressful time. So we would look for a motion to allow Ina to input that data into Paris and to have it completed by the end of the month.
Okay, Deborah moves, Todd seconds. And I just add for any, Greg, I think you're new to the IDA process. New York State has certain deadlines we have to meet, and you cannot get all the information in time for our meeting when we have to vote to approve it. So that process is ongoing unless it's changed this year, I assume. So you're still collecting information, but
Just a few little more pieces and
yeah,
we'll be done.
before our next meeting, she's required to submit. So that's why we vote now.
Thank you.
Okay. Anything
You
further?
should know that Ina is a goddess of data input.
Is that going to the report?
And I just want you to know I had no question whatsoever. I was ready to vote yes.
No problem, thank
Okay.
you.
I think we're ready to vote. Duxon?
Yes.
Deborah?
Yes.
Jerry?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Greg?
Yes.
Todd? Yes. And the chair votes yes. Okay. So Paris is addressed for the Development Corporation. And then we have an addition to the agenda for the Block 14 update. And Kelly, do you want to speak to that?
Yes, we do. Originally, Gary Ferguson was going to join us in person to provide an update on the Downtown Ithaca LDC2 group, but he is joining us on Zoom and is going to provide an update for everyone.
Okay. Hi. Welcome, Gary. We're not hearing you yet. Is your volume down?
Doesn't look like he's muted.
He's vaporized.
Now he's gone altogether.
I wish we could do that to some other people.
This is hard work.
Not to Gary, though.
I'm sorry.
Now we're hearing you, yeah.
Now you can hear me?
Now we can hear you. Welcome, Gary.
Thank you. Thank you. Sorry I couldn't be with you in person, but this is the best I could do at the moment. This is just a quick overview of where we are in the work that we're trying to do. Did you all get a chance to see the summary report that I sent in this morning?
Yes.
Okay, good. So I won't read it verbatim, but just in general, we have agreed to work with Holt Architects, and they have also added Joe Bose to their team as well to work with us on a bunch of due diligence items that we really all wanted to have done to better understand if this project makes sense. So between now and the end of May, they're in the process of doing their work. They've already started working on. We've engaged a couple people, one group to work on appraisals, another group to do an environmental scan, and that work is happening right now. Holt will also then be working on some modeling for parking, as well as some concept designs once we get a little bit further into this process. We'll try to keep both Greg and Randy appraised of what we're doing, as well as others. We are meeting with the city at the end of this week to get their input on things they would like to see and potential, if a project were to happen there, what are there things that they would like to see as part of it. We will be talking with them briefly about parking as well, seeing what their appetite or interest level may be in any sort of parking work that might engage them or not. So, but that's something that we're doing again on an ongoing basis. So it's moving forward slowly but surely. But the goal again is to try to be somewhat rational about this and come up with a game plan that we would eventually bring back to you all and to the county and see if it's something that folks would be interested in.
Okay, questions or comments for Gary? I would just offer, if you get to a point you have some sketches or design concepts you'd want to share with us, I think we'd be interested in taking a brief look, not an in-depth one, but just seeing how it's proceeding along.
Absolutely.
Okay. Anything else? Seeing none. Thanks, Gary. Okay. Moving on. Next item is the chair's report. I do not have a chair's report. So we can move to staff report.
I don't have a staff report for the TCDC at this
Okay.
time.
We can then move to, we have minutes from February 12th, 2025. If I can get a motion to approve the minutes. Todd moves. Jeff seconds. Any questions or comments on the minutes? Okay. Duxon?
Yes.
Deborah? Yes. Jerry?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Greg?
Yes.
Todd?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Okay. Is there any other business to come before the Development Corporation? Seeing none, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn. So moved. Jerry moved. Greg seconds. All those in favor, we'll do a show of hands. Good. Thanks, everybody. Let's move on to the IDA. And first item, privilege of the floor. We had it for the Development Corporation, but if there is anybody who has not spoken that wishes to address the IDA, either in person or online, seeing none, any additions to the agenda? I would note that we are going to consider a motion to go into executive session to address an item of potential proposed, pending, or current litigation under Section 105 of the New York State Public Meetings Law. But that'll be it. We'll consider that motion at the end of our regular business. Any other additions, changes? Seeing none. Business. We considered the audit, and so we've managed that piece. We also have the Paris input authorization. And I would consider a motion to allow Ina to send the information to New York State for the IDA. Todd moves, Deborah seconds. Any further discussion on that issue? Seeing none, we'll put it to a vote. Duxon?
Yes.
Deborah?
Yes.
Jerry?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Greg?
Yes.
Todd?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Okay. Housing market demand analysis. Heather?
Could you just for the record, could you just for the record at the IDA accept the audit?
Oh, yes. We did take the vote at the, do you want a separate vote?
Yeah, just so it's reflected in the minutes of the.
Yeah, okay.
the
Let's get a
IDA.
motion on the audit. We've already had the, Jeff moves, Greg seconds. That's probably better practice. I don't think we need further discussion, but if anybody had anything, okay, I'd call the vote. Duxon?
Yes.
Deborah?
Yes.
Jerry?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Greg?
Yes.
Todd?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. So we have accepted the audit for the IDA. And then the housing market demand analysis. And Heather, you prepared a memo. Do you want to introduce it?
Sure. After discussion at last month's board meeting, I put together a brief memo for your consideration if you wanted to move forward with a request for proposal for a market demand analysis of the housing market in Tompkins County. Do you want me to sort of give an overview?
Yes, please.
So basically what I did is I went and talked to a couple of consultants that have worked in this community that have done demand analyses on the private side, just to sort of understand what that process would entail, what it would look like, and that's what informed my memo that it could provide an analysis of the demand for housing at particular types, price points, rental versus for sale units, and forecast what that demand is based on, population and migration, out migration, what's going on with our housing market. They will use data to assess what that future trend might look like. And then they could also provide sort of a menu of the types of housing for different income sectors that might be missing within the market. Really to inform decision-making. I think it would inform decision-making at the IDA and for other entities, even private developers throughout the community to have, something clear that says there's demand. And so, that's sort of the information that I put together. And I think depending on how much breakdown you would want of different income ranges or types and sizes of housing, the consultants that I talked to all said they could really do it in 4 to 6 weeks. I conservatively said 8 in my memo for anywhere from $25,000 to $50,000. The IDA's procurement policy does require that you solicit a request for a proposal. So if the IDA, were so inclined, you could move to do that.
Deborah.
Yeah, thank you, Heather. We definitely need to revisit this issue, but I want to underscore that I thought that Teresa Alt's comments were well taken. I've been preaching the need for the missing middle in housing for quite some time. I realize we probably need housing at every level, but I think it should be made clear to whatever consultant we retain for this that coming back with well, I'm not going to focus on low income or missing middle because builders won't build it is not going to be acceptable. I mean, that's not what we're commissioning here. So with that caveat, I'm certainly willing to support this.
The studies that I've seen some examples from, some of the companies that do this kind of thing, and they break it down by size, by type, by price point, and that price, we all know that price point between probably 100 and 250, 300,000 is missing. Like, that's the point of the study. It's not about what the market will provide, it's what is the market not providing. And, you know, they may come back and say that there's need on the higher end. That doesn't mean that we're going to incentivize the higher end, because the market will provide that. You know, they may come back and say there's real need between, you know, 80% and 150% of AMI, and this is what different types of housing look like, and this is what the price points could be. That doesn't mean that the market's going to provide it.
No, but we're just identifying need here.
Yes, we're absolutely identifying need, and that was the conversation that I had with all the consultants that I talked to.
So Heather, in your memo there, you said you may want to consider an analysis on need for senior and student housing. Are you saying that that would be a separate analysis, or would that be a component of what we're proposing? I would certainly want us to have those in there, because I think, you know, it's certainly important for us to understand a senior, and student it is what it is, but the senior would certainly be particularly of interest. So I would certainly reiterate that I would want us to have that component in any study that we do.
Yeah, when I talked to consultants, that's why I put that range of 25 to 50,000. They did say, you know, if you specifically want to break out sort of that student market and the senior market, it might be more on the $40,000 to $50,000 end. And I would agree. I mean, so much of our market is driven by the students that would, I think, seem to be an important part.
Duxon.
Yeah, I'm generally supportive of this, and I fully agree we'd need to break out student and senior housing. Students in particular, because, you know, I've always had a difficulty teasing out. We had our income data from Census ACS, I believe, in general. And so people throw around these statistics about how many people are below the poverty line. And it's hard to tease out which of those are year-round residents versus students, and this would give us another dimension to that question.
Yeah.
With one caveat that if the data isn't available, the data isn't available. So there is going to be some sort of modeling and, you know, extrapolating from what's available. And all data is going to, you know, all consultants are going to do that because it's not perfect.
Heather,
Can I just ask, the
sure.
funding for this would come from where?
Well, I think I had a question for Greg in a minute.
Okay.
Because the county, well, I'll ask my question, Greg. The county, I think, is adding a position in the planning department, a housing specialist. And this discussion happened with planning. I can't remember which meeting, but it didn't seem like there was appetite at the planning department to do something. I'd hate to do something duplicative or spend money that we could split it with the county or they could pay for it, those people at the county. But I didn't get the sense it was going forward there.
I know that there was a search process that's underway for Director of Housing and Community Development, I think is the title. And that process is currently underway. I don't want to speak for the planning department, so I'd want to back my comments up from with Katie. But I don't see in the next year to 18 months that this type of focused work would be on the work plan. It may be a larger, more comprehensive study if one is needed. I think one of the things that we've been talking about both in the Housing and Economic Development Committee and with the planning department is what are a few actionable items that we can take based on what we currently know about the market and have planning focus on those type of initiatives currently rather than sort of restudying the problem. Restudying the problem is an important piece, and I think this is a good place to do this, and I think we should do this because I don't know how quickly at the county this could be done, and I think getting this information, you know, within the next 3 months would be helpful to inform everybody. So I wish the county could be a larger part of the solution right now, but I just think based on timing that this is maybe a more appropriate avenue to go through.
That's what I thought I heard, but okay, that's helpful. Does that answer your question, Jerry? If it's going to happen, we're going to pay for it.
Thank you.
Heather, I had a question that in a conversation, I think outside of a regular meeting, we were talking about the difference between a housing needs assessment and a demand study. And could you just talk to that a little bit so everybody's clear what we would be trying to do here?
So I think for me, a demand study, I mean, they're going to look at supply, they're going to forecast demand based on existing information. And the demand study would look at demand at all ranges of the market. A housing needs assessment might look at one section of the market, it might look at what we currently have, but it generally doesn't take that extra step of assessing demand. If you look at the county's housing needs assessment, you'll see that. The county followed up with a housing strategy where they provided some targets for numbers of housing units in that affordable space, because that's what the county was really interested in, sort of saying, we need more of this, how do we drive more of this? But those targets weren't based on, to my knowledge, a demand analysis. So they sort of looked at part of the market, which I think was a really, viable thing based on what the county wanted to do and what their desire was. The demand study would look more at that entirety of the market and put numbers to it.
Okay, that's helpful. And if I could just jump in, I agree with my colleagues that say the students and the seniors, yeah, we would want to know that. So we would want to add that into what we were requesting. And I'd also agree with Deborah that there is this missing middle where we have really done some impressive stuff with helping affordable housing projects go, and the market rate has happened. But where I would love to see us find a model that actually is financeable is this middle space, and knowing what the demand is would help us a lot. I'd also comment that in my meetings with some of the people at the Ithaca City School District, there was a sentiment expressed that we shouldn't be supporting housing, which I thought was a really interesting position, because if there's any consistent message I've heard across our county, it's we don't have enough housing. But the idea that, well, if we add housing, we add students, and so we shouldn't maybe emphasize that. I struggle with that position because of the pretty consistent message from all other directions, but it would be very good to have a clear sense of, is there demand? And I think this is money well spent to answer that. And frankly, I think the information would be very useful to our county, but also to the landlords and potential developers. So this, I think, would be helpful to us in trying to market Tompkins County as a place for developers to come. Greg.
Thanks, Rich. I think one of the things that's interesting, and I can't remember if it was in this group or in a legislature committee, but I would love to really understand the impact of projects that have gone through the IDA process and their impact on the school district. I don't know how to do that or what to look at, but number of units we've added, somehow correlation with student population growth or something, because I feel like there's some anecdotal or not factually based comments that get swirled around, and it would be nice to, solidify with some data or information. I'm not a person that can do that, so I don't know where or how we would get at that question, or if Heather has any thoughts. I know we've maybe talked about this a little bit.
So I know I pulled recently, the IDA has incentivized and has come online 946 rental units, primarily in the downtown core. About 25% of those units are affordable units. So some of those affordable units might be outside the downtown core, but primarily ICSD. So let's say, to be simple, we've added 946 units as a result of IDA incentives in the past 5 years, online. I'd ask the school, what's the impact been? Have you seen student population growth at, the Bell-Sherman Elementary? Have you seen student population growth at Boynton? Have you seen population growth at the high school? My guess is the student population is declining. So, you know, the impact, I mean, just off the top of my head, I mean, everyone always wants concrete numbers, and Jeff wants down to the penny because he's a CPA. But, you know, my guess is adding 946 units probably hasn't added much to the school population. I mean, I, you know, could certainly start asking and see. But I have no way of knowing how many students are in those households. They're primarily 1- and 2-bedroom rentals, which don't lend themselves very well to a family or a family household. So, you know, I don't know that we're going to have concrete information, but I could certainly poke around with the school district and see, you know, what impacts they've seen over the past 5 years.
Yeah, I think the demand study would help us get started there, but there would be further information. And we talked about that number because at the outside, the Southworks would add, I think, 915 units. So we've added that much. And I think you're correct that we've seen declining enrollments in the schools. So it's not clear there has been an impact or a detrimental impact. It could be people are moving from one property to another one, so adding the units hasn't changed very much. But again, more clarity in this area, I think, is better, so that if we're going to have discussions, we have them based on facts. I think Deborah and then Jeff.
Yeah, I don't know how we determine how many people moved in from outside the school district into this new housing. And we discussed that when we were looking at the Camoin study. They made assumptions that a pretty substantial percentage of the people that might move into Southworks were going to be moving from outside Ithaca. And I question whether that's a valid assumption given the shortage of housing within Ithaca.
I think they took it one step further too, is that, okay, if we add all these units and people if 100% of those people move from other substandard or higher market units in Tompkins County into those new units, someone's moving in to backfill those other units. Like, you know, unless our vacancy rates are, like, unless you're homeless in Tompkins County and moving into housing, like, people have to be coming from somewhere. I mean, you'd be looking at in-migration, out-migration, change in vacancy rates.
Is there a local tracking of vacancy rates? Does the landlord association do that? They don't?
Not that I'm aware of. The recent numbers that I looked at were American
Not with any
Community
reliability.
Survey.
I was going to say, they don't want to share.
Nobody really wants to report on that.
Okay, Jeff.
So Heather, maybe you don't know this yet, it'll come out in the report, but how would someone doing this report factor in items or housing that's been approved that's, you know, going to be built over the next 2 to 3 years, say in College Town or say the State Street building, and then obviously the big one is Southworks, where we know it's coming online. We don't know when, but do you have any sense as to how they would factor those items in that are coming online?
My assumption is that would be out of the scope. I mean, they're going to look at data that they have.
Needs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're going to forecast. I mean, we could certainly look and say, okay, well, we know this many's been approved in the city, or there's been this many building permits or this many approvals, and compare that with the demand numbers.
Yeah, I think that would be up to us to factor in when we get a study. Further discussion. It sounds like there's some consensus here. Heather.
I just wanted to point out that I did have a brief conversation with Katie Borgella in County Planning, and I didn't want her to feel like we were stepping on her toes at the IDA. And she recognizes that, you know, she's got her work plan and they've got their focus. And she sort of said, yeah, that would be great if the IDA wanted to fund that kind of a thing. So I we worked together quite significantly, and I didn't want anyone to feel like we were supplanting the county planning department in any fashion.
No. And that was the reason I'd raised it at a meeting with Katie, was just to see if they wanted to jump in, and it sounded like they were not ready to do that. If we're ready, does somebody want to make a motion to
Put out an RFP?
put out an RFP? Deborah moves. Greg seconds. Further discussion? Ready to vote? Duxon?
Yes.
Deborah?
Yes.
Jerry?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Greg?
Yes.
Todd?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Great. That'll be really interesting to see, and less than 8 weeks from now.
I'm marking my calendar.
Was that for the RFP process to be completed or to get the report?
Well, we'll see. It may take longer than that with the logistics, but I think that's a really positive step for us to take. Next up is 2024 accomplishments. And I think there's a list.
I have a short presentation I will share. In 2024, you as a board really pulled together and did some fantastic work. And so we wanted to just take a couple of minutes and go over some of those items. If I can get this to cooperate. Here's just a snapshot of some of the items that were approved last year. Obviously, Southworks, Meadow on Seneca, RSS, Caramore Solar, the refinancing of the Cayuga Medical Center bond and the purchase of that location in Cortland, the Block 14 pre-development study by the Development Corp, and the TEP Medical sales tax incentive. And the outcomes from those projects, there were 4 overall, with 253 new affordable units, 11 new jobs, $1.5 million in new payroll, 985 new housing units, $635 million in private investment, $47 million in new property taxes, and 5 megawatts of new solar. So.
Big year. Yeah, certainly Southworks is a big part of what's shown in those outcomes, but we did a lot of other things too. And I think we also did some good things for the community in terms of helping the farmers market, helping the community kitchen, helping the Block 14 study go forward. You know, I think we've done things that certainly help large projects, but also some of the smaller efforts, you know, say like Cinemapolis. I was very happy that we got to that just after 24, but good stuff. Deborah, did you have a comment?
No.
Oh, I thought I saw a hand up.
For a change.
Duxon.
I had a question about a statistic Heather mentioned earlier. So we approved 985 in 2024. So 946 is constructed over the past 5 years.
Yes.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah. Well, I hope 2025 we top it.
Another Southworks?
Another Southworks. We'll do our next one.
God, no.
We also have the report on page 4 of our agenda with the IDA open project status. And I don't know if everybody had a chance to look at that. I was curious, NSF Enfield Solar Site 123, it shows expected completion year end 2024, or was that supposed to be 25? Ina?
I did have a brief conversation with the project in dealing with the audit, and they did say that they're still working on their building permit, so it's probably going to move into 2025. So
Okay.
I think they've actually started.
And then I was curious about the farmer's market. Should that be on here somewhere?
There isn't an ongoing incentive. It was just
It's
funding.
done.
So
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, we wouldn't consider it an open project.
And then the Cliff Street Retreat, if the property is for sale, it sounds like that. Do you know if they're trying to sell it with the same development proposal, or is it just selling it?
It's just for sale.
Okay. So it's unlikely that project is going to proceed. One narrative, certainly I take away from this, is the ongoing impacts of the pandemic. You look at the dates on these things, and so many of these projects are hanging fire or probably not going forward. You know, I'd love to see some of them get a push. The project at the base of State Street, it was good to see them moving it finally. And I walked by there 2 days ago, peeked over the fence, and there is site work going on. So,
Well, for what it's worth, we're on target to open the shared kitchen in the middle of April.
yeah, great,
Equipment is going in as we speak, and
exciting.
we're starting to take reservations.
Good stuff. Anybody else? All right, good. I do not have a chair's report. Oh, actually, I will just mention the local labor committee met and discussed some changes to the policy. I think they're not in front of you because we just considered them and agreed to them, but they'll be at our next meeting, I think, for approval by the IDA. And just to remind everybody, what we're talking about is taking that reporting function and contracting it out. It seems like, one, the burden of trying to track all these things in office is not the most efficient use of staff time. And there's a company that does this. This is their job. They're going to, I think, add some significant capability to the collection of the data on a weekly basis rather than a monthly basis and systematize it that way. And they do it for, Heather, you said 21 other IDAs?
A number of other IDAs.
A number. Strike 21. 21 is a number, 25. But we'll strike that. Okay, several other.
A number.
And so that'll be coming next month. But other than that, I don't have a chair's report. So staff report.
Okay, the first item for the staff report is the investment recommendation. As Evan mentioned, while he was reviewing the audit, we did have a Finance and Audit Committee meeting on March 3rd and discussed establishing an interest-bearing account for the IDA fund balance. So we would like to obviously maximize the amount of interest that you can earn on the available funds for the IDA. One thing of note is that instead of recommending the amount in the memo of $800,000, I reduced that to $500,000 just based on the current account balances and expenses that are forecasted throughout the year. So changing that to $500,000, investing in an account. Lori Scarrett reached out to Tompkins Community Bank, which is where the account is held, and they've offered 4% on a savings account. So.
I certainly agree with that, taking that step. That's $20,000, right, over a year. We shouldn't be stepping over that money. Yeah. Okay.
Consider investing in Bitcoin.
Jeff, what's your thought on that?
Maybe invest in the stock market right now too, you know?
Todd has made a motion. Could I get a second? Jerry seconds. And this would be to authorize Kelly to make that investment at the Tompkins Community Bank. Further discussion? Duxon?
Yes.
Deborah?
Yes.
Jerry?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Greg?
Yes.
Todd?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Great. Okay.
Excellent. We already went over the project dashboard update. The next item is we did receive the settlement payment from Arrowhead, which is very exciting.
You actually got money out of a stone.
We did.
How much?
You did. Can I disclose that?
Is that a publicly disclosed?
No, I guess that's a.
It's a settlement, so
Okay.
maybe we don't put that on the record, I don't know.
We got something.
That's impressive.
Yes,
That's impressive. Okay,
yes,
well, a win for the taxpayers.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And that is.
Every once in a while.
Not a tax payment, it is just a settlement amount, so,
Which does not cover our legal fees that we
no.
But
paid.
And we have to
But it's
distribute
done.
that to the taxing?
We
no?
do not, because it was not a recapture of tax payments.
Oh, okay.
It was a
Interesting.
settlement in lieu of going to court. Russ, I would let you speak to that, because I asked that same question of you.
Should we
Yeah.
save that for
But it's still a
executive
benefit to the taxpayer.
discussion?
Yes.
Yeah, that's correct, and as everyone knows, this has been going on for quite some time. It was determined by the board that the cost and time of going through, a full-blown lawsuit, frankly, just wasn't worth it. So the fact that the board got something is surprising and certainly better than nothing.
Okay, so some good news. All right, anything further from staff?
Yes, we have an update on the Yellow Barn Solar project that will be coming to the IDA soon. It is, just a reminder, it's a 160 megawatt utility scale solar project that's going to be on approximately 800 acres of land between Lansing and Groton. This is 75% of it approximately will be in Groton and the remainder in Lansing. The land has been secured with a combination of purchase and land lease options. And this project would generate enough clean energy to power approximately 32,000 homes. The project developer is CS Energy, and they are an industry-leading energy engineering, procurement, and construction firm with over 1.5 gigawatts of solar capacity installed to date. As far as the approval process, the solicitation and approval of utility solar scale solar projects is largely governed by the state of New York. And to meet the New York State clean energy standard goal of achieving 70% renewably sourced electricity by 2030, NYSERDA's large-scale renewables program issues annual procurements for eligible renewable energy generators and developers interested in long-term renewable energy certificate contracts. CS Energy received an award from the 2021 RFP for the Yellow Barn Solar Project. The New York State Office of Renewable Energy Siting, ORES, published comprehensive rules and regulations governing these large-scale renewable energy projects in New York State. The first one stating that all large-scale renewable energy projects must submit a permit application to ORES for review and approval. And secondly, that the permit application and applicable studies are then reviewed by ORES along with the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation. And I'm not sure what, New York State HPO. SHPO.
The State Historic Preservation Office.
Okay,
We
thank
love
you.
them.
And other applicable federal agencies. So CS Energy submitted their permit application to ORES in November of 2023. The draft permit was issued on December 16th, 2024, and a public hearing was held in the town of Groton on February 20th, 2024. A few of us did attend that public hearing. I would say it was pretty well attended by members of the community. A final determination is expected in the next several months and a planned construction start of Q4 of this year. In addition to the comprehensive state rules and regulations, the applicant has indicated that they will substantially comply with all local laws related to large-scale solar in the towns of Groton and Lansing. As far as the pilot negotiations, ORES does require that utility-scale solar developers negotiate a host community agreement, an HCA, with the towns. So the towns of Groton and Lansing did hire an attorney to assist them with this negotiation, and representatives from the towns and their attorney, along with representatives from the IDA, Rich, IDA staff and IDA council will be working together to negotiate both the HCA and pilot to achieve mutual goals. So maximizing revenue under the host community agreement and the pilot agreements. We have done quite substantial background research on other recent large-scale solar project pilots in New York State. We've reviewed the state's uniform valuation and assessment model. The model was recently struck down by the courts, however, to understand the baseline for this project, and have met with County Assessor Jay Franklin to further understand relevant background information to inform this pilot negotiation. The respective representatives met last week to review the background data and agreed on a starting point for the negotiation, and are in the process of setting up a meeting with CS Energy to relay that information. And ultimately, the towns will approve their HCA portion, and the IDA will approve the pilot.
Okay. And I don't see Russ with us right now, but I thought he was going to share some information on this legal decision that just came down. Oh, there he is.
Yeah, sorry about that.
You're using
and
your
I apologize
alias.
for not being there today. I think I was stricken with that norovirus, and I wanted to spare even
That's
the
fine.
potential of it spreading it
Who's
around,
Reg,
so
though?
Anyway, yeah, and I was hoping to have some more definitive information at this meeting to present to the board. Our group is still looking at that, and certainly in advance of next month's meeting, our plan is to prepare a memorandum that we're going to share with all of our IDA LDC clients, kind of outlining what this means and how it impacts, how we're going to have to operate. So stand by, and I apologize that my partner Justin out of our Albany office is working on it. It just didn't get done before this month's meeting.
That's okay. And it sounded like a fairly complicated decision. I read a summary of it, and it was not straightforward, at least as I read it.
That's exactly right.
I would just make a comment for the rest of the IDA members that this project is going to be a little bit different than we typically look at, because the measure for assessment is based on the megawatts. So there's a charge per megawatt as a pilot, and that's the formula that New York State had developed that has just been struck down, so that whatever that number is going to be different. And New York State has this HCA, host community agreement requirement, that comes out of whatever that number is. So you negotiate that number with the developer, but then there's a separate sort of split between the towns and the taxing jurisdictions. And so I'm a little bit nervous about this, because this seems like a slippery slope thing, that you never want to do a different percentage other than you share the same percentage of taxes incentivized or abated. But this will be different because that's what state law says. And I think we have to be very consistent that we're doing it different here because we have to do it different here. And that this is not a precedent for other projects, because otherwise we will get down a very slippery slope where we get arguments about, well, don't abate these taxes, take it more from yours or some other municipalities. Anyway, that's all coming. And it's hard to say what those numbers are going to be. I think the formula was around 9,500 a megawatt, something like that, but it's probably going to be a lower number. And from there, some of it will be peeled off for the host community agreement. Is that a fair summary? Did I misstate anything?
Yes,
No,
but
that-
the towns and the IDA representatives all agreed that we would not publicly disclose what the starting negotiation point is so that that doesn't impact our negotiation.
Did I just violate that? That was
No, our starting point is a different number.
Yeah, so the formula is not operable, the number I said.
Yeah, I've spent a lot of time with the model and with solar projects even before the model. And the model had its deficiencies. It sort of provided a baseline, and there were some things that you could modify, like the projected tax rates, but there were other things that they just automatically assessed in there, like the decommissioning bond amount, and they didn't look at ag. If ag land is taken off the ag rolls, you have to pay back taxes, like some of those one-time payments. So it was an imperfect measure, like it gave sort of a baseline, and Jay Franklin and I talked about, well, here's all the things that could make it go up, here's all the things that could make it go down. So I just want to caveat that it was sort of an estimate. It wasn't a perfect estimate, but time will tell. I think what's more telling is what we've seen within the past year with other utility scale solar projects around the state.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, go ahead, Todd.
I'd like to say something. I was at that February 20th meeting, and I was after CS Energy pretty heavy on some items that I had. And since then, I just want to let everybody know I've done my homework. I've been talking with them, and they've been very responsive and very attentive. So I'm definitely going to be supporting them with the project. I really like the idea that they own it from start to finish. They see it completed through. The main thing is just making the people in the community happy with the project, because that's the main hurdle they got to face now. But I have no concerns with them anymore.
Thank you, Todd.
They really came through. Yep.
Okay. Yeah, Mike, I was going to say, Mike Sigler represents part of where this project is located, and I know you spoke at the public hearing, and I'd like to give you a chance to just speak with us briefly to share your thoughts.
No, I mean, thank you for that. Yeah, I spoke on it because, I mean, just to give you an idea of size, I mean, this really is, this along with several other in the state are going to be the largest things that the state has ever seen. I mean, we're talking hundreds of acres, and thousands of acres really. So this one, I think, when it's all built out, is something like 800 acres, and that's just the panels. And then you add in the roads, you add in the fencing and all that. My concern, listen, I'm not going to be able to steer the state one way or the other, whether they're going to do the project or not. My concerns are the people that are already living there. So, the setbacks, I spoke at this when they had the big meeting up in Syracuse. I went up and said the setbacks are ridiculous, frankly. 100 feet off of the back line property of somebody's property, or 60 feet off the side yard. And they can put a road in that 60 feet. They can put a fence in that 60 feet. It's 60 feet, I think, off the center line of the road. So this is going to be right on top of roads. I mean, I would like to see them do mature trees. I have a little bit of faith because the state did the DOT facility up on, on Warren. I mean, they put in sizable tree. I mean, they put in what I would consider right size, and that looked actually pretty decent when they were done with it. I was concerned that they were going to bring in non-union labor from out of state. I mean, it's that big of a project. It's just enormous. So, I'm not really here to talk about the taxing and all that. That'll be worked out. It is interesting that the way they had set that up was viewed unconstitutional, so we'll see. Would like to bring out, when we had a power plant, AES Cayuga, we had a pretty good pilot with them. And maybe that should be the starting point, because they're both making power, they're both power plants. I've been told that's impossible to do and make the numbers work, but,
Okay, thanks, Mike.
I don't think it is, so we'll see. But anyway, I would just like you to, frankly, protect the homeowners. It's the #1 investment for a lot of these people. And if you're trying to tell me that your house surrounded by solar panels isn't going to affect the value of that house, I just don't believe that.
Okay. Yeah, I was at that hearing, and it was interesting to me just how bifurcated, if I can use that word, the comments were, that there were residents there who expressed a lot of concerns about the impacts on their home values, but also on agricultural processes, you know, especially whether there'd be a real loss of feed, you know, hay and corn for dairy farms. And then there were representatives from the various unions for the electricians, and they were saying, this is jobs. This is really the future we need to look at, and this is a way to accomplish it. I am sure that same discussion is going to play out in front of us. They're coming. So we should be prepared to really listen to everybody coming in and see what we're going to do. Questions, comments? Anything further from staff? We have minutes from February 12th, 2025. Could I get a motion? Todd moves. Duxon, I'm going to count that as a second. Questions or comments? All right, Duxon.
Yes.
Deborah.
Yes.
Jerry.
Yes.
Jeff.
Yes.
Greg.
Yes.
Todd.
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. And then I believe we've got a matter for consideration if we can get a motion to go into executive session. And let me just read the an executive session for a discussion regarding proposed, pending, or current litigation under Section 105 of the New York State Public Meetings Law. Could I get a motion? Deborah moves. Greg seconds. Discussion? Ready to vote? Duxon?
Yes.
Deborah?
Yes.
Jerry?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Greg?
Yes.
And Todd. And will we be taking public or any action after the meeting? So we're going to come out of executive session and potentially take a vote? Okay.
Right.
All right. So in the meantime, we need to take a recess to shut down the system, and we'll pick up in a minute.
We're going to keep the members, but turn off the live stream. There are some members in there, in the system.
Oh, okay.